ko bi be kacha sura la kabri furata jang ning Gambian ol mel bi jam be kacha sura kan ne bari bi furata minna of course I will political science lecturer andu mole mi alon ko ato faraman sata bakele Gambia banko kan jang wala Gambia banko kan min kera of course Essa Njie bi nabe kacha la ko do la mi alon ko afamata kacha la wala the political situation Gambia banko kan jambari nabe kachala fana about diaspora voting mi alon ko National Assembly ya reject Gambia banko kan nyimbe be kala quality mi alon ko naba kachala. Essa, welcome.
Thank you. Baraka bake Buba. Content bake. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Since I last appeared on Kelfatu. But you know, Canada be caring, break that demanding. Canadian can develop fanam. Content bake to have me on this special program, I would say.
Yeah, it's a very very special program because mo jamal lebe solar in purke mai. Okay. Ka call follow daming. Gambia la political situation right now. Ngalo ne famata dia mo la bari be call follow kan ne Gambia banko kan jang. Mu de observation.
Well, at some point, that kabin nata jang for my program, my doctoral program in higher education, na break talanum completely from the Gambia. I was not following keenly because na concentration needed.
Yeah.
And even right now, of course, doctoral studies for PhD is not easy. It requires a lot of focus and commitment. So mantra situation of follow come back in, but at some point. I felt like I need to stay in touch. I need to stay connected to events happening in the country because at some point, new feniti me anunka can be affect. Momo yanunko be banko kan wale mantra banko can be affected. And looking at the Gambia's political situation, kabiring election okera 2016, 2017 change of government keta, baby menjibe kan wale transition oti. From dictatorship to democracy, but what we are all hoping for was, of course, the rule of law will be respected, fundamental rights and freedoms will be respected as well. We will be able to consolidate our democracy. Ngalonda kata killer within a very short period, but of course, within some period, by democratic consolidation, we move a little towards that. 2021 election, Gambians, voted, with 53% voted for President Barrow to, continue, steering the affairs of the country. And Nina Tajibe, member Keka Walentela observation and Mendina Walimko. Instead of moving towards consolidating our democratic gains, at some point we are experiencing an episode of regression or democratic backsliding. Okay, some political science. Some scholars have talked about this. The likes of Joseph Stiglitz have always made reference to this man. Alex Thompson, they talked about democratic consolidation. And if you look at Stiglitz and Memphis some countries in Africa, transition to democracy. In their first 5 years, mostly an episode of regression, sort of like a democratic backsliding, sort of. Democratic backsliding, menka cause when there is the absence of strong and robust democratic institutions, they will hold the government to account. When that sense of accountability is, mantra bambanding, leaders can always turn to be autocratic. Okay, not necessarily they be more fala. That's not happening in the Gambia, right? Like what we were witnessing during Jammeh's time was, people were being killed. That's not what we are experiencing. But they can muzzle the media. They can stifle the institutions of governance. At some point, even though people can have the freedom to voice out, Melianun can be affected at some point, but they can restriction and at some point fanang abikana meaningful fanang. Mol se dia munul okay nyini be caring. At the end of the day man sakunda bikana simfa dalta Melianun ko call address la. I'll give you a typical example of sometimes mol katara Gambia ngajila of listener kake. People will express frustration, ya foko be protest kala, police yana ye restrict, albe protest kala jamma fangolla, exactly within this period alba kala walla, aliena alia petition hand over, new petition on your hand over, akada wolato. Okay, fembe kana finti je kotenge. So is that the essence of democracy? People just come and protest, just voice out their frustration or their dissatisfaction with what is happening, and then Mansakunda Fenkadrong Aidawato. No, that is not the essence of democracy. It is about ensuring that those in authority are held accountable. So don't control democracy. Some scholars control democracy or illiberal democracy. That level of freedom, that modicum of freedom, but at some point, abekana nafaso to bake. All that you do is a space diala lepurale diamu, but at the end of the day, they will not take any action kajeko alkamem concern men raise ya address. So democracy katarajele in its name. So when they for control democracy, they like these kind of leaders when the country is backsliding into autocracy at some point, control democracy like a democracy di mola freedom di mola, but at the end of the day, molka sula menna will be target. So I feel like Gambia both situation right now, and Nina Rajibe, what it in a political system will be characterized in menna, outright, corruption is rampant in the country, institutional inefficiency, or and also of course people in authority, in governance, do not seem to care much about the situation of the people. Okay, the citizens, more the rising crime rate, as I said, corruption, poverty, high cost of living, among others. But what is the government doing, like tangible, significant steps the address? I think this is lacking. And also, let's look at the political side, like political parties, for example. At some point, our opposition, yes, opposition will they take some steps, but I think I feel like the opposition with telephone and demanding Gambia, in the sense that they hold the government accountable collectively. What is lacking? And it seems like opposition will form a new attack. Exactly. And one of the conditions or factors highlighted as an obstacle to democratic consolidation in Africa is also a disunited opposition force. The opposition is disunited. So incumbent always have the advantage. That was what happened during Jamila time near Jibe. Opposition of fragmental at some point the Kalafika coalition form Abeka work. In that, finally when they came together in 2016, we saw the results, right? It worked for them. Yeah. But Gambian Barrow for Nata, when they barrowing UDP problem some people felt like okay, UDP is the problem, and now it has turned to that. Komikaje opposition parties can you attack. Yeah. Instead of opposition coming together, because it be one goal to make sure Mansakunda membi ya bondi, because I feel like a mantra nyama. But instead, what we have seen in the Gambia of recent is opposition party or politician or Milialonko. They call the opposition, a baker join to the incumbent. So at some point, I can question the credibility of the opposition. I call it put in question, and we have seen the incumbent leveraging about attack and about utilize. They are making best use of that. And cooperation in Gambian politics amongst that sign during Jawara's time, it was there. Okay, the PS guys, okay, the Jamila time marketer, I think we saw how Sheriff Diba came back to the political arena in 2001. Jamila co-opt as Speaker of the National Assembly. We saw how Lamin Wajuara, a very formidable, strong, opposition force at the time, opposition figure at the time. Moneke Jamila Mutala co-opt, I can, governor to LRR, Amurake minister to Kotenke. So, a continued according to Barrow's time, we are seeing how a lot of opposition parties, Dolbeji election of Kabri election of 2021, a joined. Dolbeji Kabri election of Tamita, Inata, a joined. Okay, we saw APRC was in opposition, right? But a joined, CA will be that a joined, and other parties, GPDP. So, now, Melialonko, they were in fact Barrow's biggest critics. Will be turned now to be his biggest praise singers, from biggest critics to biggest praise singers, and that is affecting opposition unification in the country. So, yeah.
You left that before Mulbita in 2026, you left the EGMI because you've mentioned something that is very, very important. Ning opposition political party man coming in the Gambia, it will be very, very difficult to incumbent defeat in that country. So, but yet you have more start damning, Mansakunda mi alon ko lebe Gambia right now mo famantra kering je ko ya jame bake kan no nyame but you are suggesting that authoritarian rule can start jamming, and you've mentioned the high cost of living, you've mentioned also a lack of security me along ko wolebe Gambia, but are we moving towards authoritarian regime in the Gambia?
I mean, so I don't want to say outright that we are moving, but I want to believe that, or I suspect that we are having that sense of backsliding to autocracy, okay? Because the thing called and the elements or the features or the characteristics, you might call them, are somehow visible. I will give an example. People will say, okay, court, for example, judiciary is independent and all that not. But what we have seen is that judiciary court ka judgment all deal, and we see government blatantly disregarding those judgments, right? Yeah. We have seen, for example, Pamodu and the guy in Brekama, yes, court case win, the government is yet to pay, and I doubt whether they're even going to pay. Bora, for example, was arrested.
His phone is still with the police.
His phone is still with the police, right? Yes. He called court here, order me to compensate Kodomen Imake. Madi Jobate was being followed there, right? Nene Freda Gomez. A lot of people, fundamental rights were being violated, and we have seen how the police has now turned to be a political instrument of the incumbent, in the sense that the political statements, for example, people will make political statements and the police will go after them. And then they keep them beyond the constitutional limit of 72 hours, sorry. So what is a violation of people's fundamental rights? And then you find another aspect another feature we kind of backsliding is the absence of robust civil society. Civil society were strong, I feel, between 2017 and 2021. But coming 2021 nata election tamita civil society Victor Domaninkele. I mean, we've seen your case like we've seen CRPD with Gambia participate taking the $54 million loan thing, with the courts. Yakumba Jetala Fankonying. And we've seen some steps being taken by civil society. But now what we are seeing is that civil society Victor Domaninkele, in the sense that ila lodula menti to hold government to account some people felt offended, but I feel like we have project-oriented civil societies in that country. Jama bije kak fenka menna training lang, we're organizing training for police, we're organizing training for journalists, we're organizing training for these, that, the courts and new workshop all nin fenka bambalo le ka mama wolela. But mansakunda ka luatinya daming. Civil society should come out to speak against those things. But momentara ke kan Gambia, you can make fenka ko nindi America opposition le muting, you can box le. It's normal for people to box you. And for me, I mean, even in academia, scholars sometimes, we have what we call scholar activism. One can become a scholar at the same time be an activist. So one can being in civil society, in fact, makes you more of an activist because you're there to defend what is right and fight against what is wrong. So, and again, recently, President remarks on, they're very threatening. Okay?
Especially during this last quarter.
I more call out like before that. I mean, is it what, last year or 2 years ago? Madi Jobate was called out. Yes. Is a threat. You understand, to the stability of the country, and then Masakunda Nyaka stepped down. I mean, some media houses, Membekering, I will mention that specifically. Democracy mantra Gambia Walter Sotola. Wofanang is a threat to media freedom. We have seen how this media house, Voice newspaper, your stories of a mayor was totally okay because according to journalistic standard, it's a source sort of knowledge. But even at gunpoint, you might decide not to reveal your source. So they said we had this. You have story in Safe, which was totally okay, and the president came and said he's going to take legal action if they don't withdraw, which is fine. It's his right to take legal action. He wanted to take, I mean, what we saw was the police intervening or interfering to take, press charges against the journalists, and then all of a sudden they cook whatever they cook. That's, the State House to say Natalie apologize and all that. And I feel like the GPU, as a press union, as a press organization, or the umbrella body of all journalists or media houses in the country, is really weakened as well. It's really a weak institution, and so really make sure that the NNC stop, because you are encouraged. When they encourage that, a precedent was set. And that's why of recent again, when they came out with another report, a story, where they said survey reveals, okay, corruption in, executive or cabinet and executive and National Assembly. I mean, they had to call them again. I was told it's the Minister of Information who called them.
Yeah, Dr. Cisse.
And they had to go and apologize again or whatever to say that it's wrong. But I mean, I don't know where they use this. This is semantics. And then I don't even know, like, who said that surveys cannot reveal?
No, but in 2021, when the survey revealed that, Barrow will win the 2021 presidential election, that was my headline. I said, survey reveals Barrow will win 2021, but they didn't complain at it.
Survey, I mean, these are semantics. Survey reveals, or survey reports, or survey unveils. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this. Not only because survey confirms, because these surveys are mostly perceptions. If you do research and you understand research, these are perceptions. So perceptions do not necessarily confirm that something is happening, right? Even more opinion in Ninkakang, the corruption, so it's not a confirmation. Not a survey confirms. Then that could have been something else. But because survey reveals, that's what the survey reveals. So you go and get the perception. You want to understand more because there was nothing wrong with the headline or with the word, because I think that was the main problem that they had. But I mean, I must say that I am really disappointed in a lot of Gambians. I had hopes in them. I don't want to mention names, but I've heard some people that are sometimes involved in these things try to say that and Finkating.
It was the information minister actually who
No, I'm not talking about the information minister.
No, I mean the Voice newspaper case. It was the information minister.
I know. Trying to encourage those meetings, those kind of conversations or discussions with the government. I mean, I know these politicians, obviously, what do you expect? I mean, so for them, we don't even talk about them, right? Because Nalon need to be nyaming, it's all how they are right now, which is very unfortunate. But I mean, I think, people that have, especially those that have been in the media, some of them are present in these meetings. Those that have been in the media, civil society space, make sure you stop. But it's only been encouraged. And Nimman Kika, for stage, regret. I mean, and as I said, the president threatening his remarks on attacking the imams, talking about media houses. I mean, I saw Fatou Toure's response, which was very brief but very powerful. It was a powerful message that their job is not to bring out Kafu Mansakunda and Kukendo Lerke. I mean, I've seen Fatou reporting, Fatou Network and other media houses reporting government development projects.
Yes, sir.
So how do you say that Kuma can, because some report can do finding it, ku kurumol damale finding but ni mang tada ku kurumo ke kan, why should you be scared? So, and you don't dictate what media houses write. You don't dictate what journalists report. It only by jibe la mengyalonko is of interest to people in the audience, so you cannot dictate that. So he must understand that. I mean, all this government spokesperson, Minister of Information, I mean, Director of President State House, you recently shared $40 million is among, because for me, I don't even call it a contract. You shared it among some media houses, right? So, I mean, that's something that people complain about, and you have no problem with that. Now you want to dictate what people write. So the media, I feel like, is threatening in that country. The civil society space is weakened. The space is weakened. And I feel like also citizens at some point are not doing, the needful to make sure that they hold the government to account to prevent a possible backsliding to autocracy. Okay,
so you talked about political parties. Political party milia alonko kameo mantretema, the oppositions milia alonko kameo mantretema. Now, we are moving towards 2026 presidential election. Dole kana science and intending. Well, President Ngoya already announced like a kabita for the third term of the contest because our party is too young, and now that political parties or opposition political parties in the Gambia. What do you think? What will observation of it towards 2026 presidential election?
I think the disunity among the opposition parties, the fragmentation and the attacks in the Malcolm Sotonyola is to the advantage of the incumbent. And I think, I mentioned the incumbent in 2021, that's the same thing that they are going to do, to make sure that the opposition parties don't co-opt. Because if a message mentioned a victory for this particular opposition party is going to be a threat to the rest. I can tell Doronko, even in political systems where, tribal politics or tribalism is entrenched, a victory for one party which is dominated by the tribe is a threat to the rest of the tribes. That's the narrative that they peddle. So the opposition will love to come in see if I think it's time that they have that honest, that straightforward, principle-based, and I would say, genuine conversations. Those unapologetic conversations. Many alonko are being narratively dismantled.
There are people already joining him. We've seen the campaign manager of UDP, Sabali, join. We've seen Dr. Cisse join. So these are strong politicians.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely. As I said, incumbent being utilized because opposition will unite in that country. But again, the point also is, Buba, we also have to understand one thing. Most of these political parties that are even coming up claiming to be opposition, what in fact do they stand for? And then that's a problem. Because they don't have a sense of purpose, they don't have a sense of direction. And as long as political party is not like no, you must have a sense of purpose, you must have a sense of direction, your plan sort of. But so at the end of the day, what they do is to join the incumbent because they don't even know what they are. And I've seen some of them listen and then you ask them, what are your plans? Policy. Some of them will tell you. I think I watched one of the programs, by the way, you had with one of them. Is it this Nafa party?
Oh, Nafa? Yeah, Nafa.
Yeah, the guy was like, I'm not here to ridicule. I think that's the word he used, ridicule or whatever, the government or the incumbent. I mean, talk about your plans. You can't talk about it because if you're coming as an opposition force, it's because
you want to know what you have.
Exactly. You're not satisfied with the system and you want to bring an alternative. But women are kidding. And then at the end of the day, it's more convinced you don't have anything to put on the table. Okay, but how are you going to do this? So some of them maybe an immense sense of direction sort of. As a result, it's going to be very easy for the incumbent. So towards 2026, I feel like there is a lot at stake in that country. Because I personally, let me put aside my academic cap or scholarly cap or whatever, but as a concerned citizen, I feel like that country is not only going in the wrong direction, it has gone in the wrong direction. It's not about going in the wrong direction, it has gone in the wrong direction. And for us to fix the country, it will take us many years. It could take us decades, in fact. Because the terrible things Jame did in that country, aside from fundamental human rights violations, the killings and all that, the economic crimes I will commit, I mulla kudum na fulu tinya nyaming. Pusul pasal nyaming, more long for cabin, Jana Commission nada, when those revelations were made. And the impact is still there. So what is happening with the current government, with the Barrow government, molta tinyaro nyun lonna, funding alaman sakunda botaji. So it's going to take a lot of time. And that's why in 2026, Gambians have that responsibility to make sure they put in place a serious government. A government that is going to, be concerned about the welfare and well-being of the people, a government that is going to respond to the needs and aspirations of the people, a government that is going to be responsible and representative, not a government that only thinks about itself. So I think this is what is at stake. But then Gambian online, I don't like to Gambia election or predict. They can be Gambians can be very unpredictable. Yes, right. You can never tell. So I don't know how this thing will go, but I know for sure with what is happening in the country, if the oppositions are very strategic, one, in their choice of a candidate, two, in their approach in terms of messaging, and three as well in terms of how they present themselves to the people, okay, with the plans. You understand? It's not only about the choice of candidate, not only about the message, but it's also about what you have in store, what you have as plans. With these three things, need strategic planning, I think they will, of course, coming together. Well, it's a fallacy to say opposition, one party to incumbent remove Nola. I'm not saying that it's not possible, but it will be very, very hard. It's not possible. Like I said, Gambian election, but I know it's going to be very hard. So if the opposition are able to come up with a force, a unified force, be strategic in their choice of candidate, be strategic in their messaging, but also have concrete, tangible plans for the people, I want to believe that they'll be able to remove the incumbent. But new one can later, the current disunity in ning a continuator towards 2026, it's going to be a victory for the incumbent, because we've seen even within some political parties, say the UDP, some tussle internal fights, even though the incumbent also has that. But woman better opposition letter back. Internal fights of incumbent will come and ignore it. But now opposition affect it. So I feel like Gambians have, it's a sacred and moral duty of every Gambian, every genuine and patriotic Gambian, to make sure that they come out in 2026, a system put in place. Abe banko falina for the better. I don't care what people might say, like, okay, atolmu karandin loyalty, atolmu analyst solar, scholar loyalty. Well, I've not been analyzing Gambian politics for a very long time. But before,
you're a Gambian too.
I'm a Gambian. Before my academic card or my academic whatever,
you're a citizen.
I'm a citizen foremost. and I feel like Gambia Benyamin signed them momo betonya follow nyoe. Nkana tonya nakari. Nimbe honest conversation, on apologetic conversation nimba sotola. It's really sad how people are dying in that country. Yes, it's really sad how I was watching one of your programs, the Grand Bantaba, that lady was saying that more saba for Nani Bang, Laran killing what FNCO Dolto, Health Center Dolto.
In Nanaba.
I think in Yanida too, that boy was also complaining. It's sad, Ikata Gambia be Mindan Geoformal is a problem. Ikata Gambia be electricity, Ntolomol from fixed no. Even in Bangkok, you've come here and you've seen Crown and Amanda. Because
we are used to that in the Gambia.
And then sometimes you meet I wish you have conversation with some people. I mean, my experience in traveling, be it in South Africa, UK, and Gambia, and of course on some other continent, Kenya, Ghana, with some period for those ones, but South Africa, UK, and these places for studies. I have fun because ni moja malaka conversation na soto. Sometimes when I talk to people and say I'm from Gambia, I mean sunkaro kono something kata salola daming, jamo into nimbe conversation na soto kanteng. And some of them will be like, okay, which country I don't have Libya, but Morocco, but Tulalto, other countries. But I mean, when I say Gambia, and then some of them don't know, and I feel so bad. Mojama biji man Gambia formula as a country. Then kafu wala kale Senegal londe ko Senegal lon. So kafu imbe Senegal bala do be jen kam mapo fa kafu Gambia is just like a tongue in a mouth. Like Senegal le mouthty, ñinen tongue tin ko yen surround on the east and west and the east, north and south. Then west ning wala Atlantic Ocean wala dañinte. So don't be jika, and when they ask the population, like, well, according to the last GBOS census, it was 2.4. But some are saying 2.5, 2.6. Some of them will say, I met an Ethiopian who was like, a kid can follow by camera, what? Then you don't have poverty in that country. Then everybody's employed
because it's a small country.
Yes, 2.5 me alongo to borrow Sidia Jara, Sorable Sidia Jara, Ako Banco me alongo the program, Ako Banco me alongo Sable and Lopuso on and it's true. I mean, you look at that country, 2.5 from a Bayman Gambian world. Other nationalities bejede. Banco me alongo doyari when you have a land size, you're talking about 11,000 square miles. What are we doing in that country? With the remote for Gambia is a poor country. It's not a poor country. When I look at the Kodo Menkadu Banco Kang, and Inka called Dundi Banco na just we saw they're talking about $3 million is being allocated for President Obama. And a man for SG Damunam. I'm like, should we even take care of the president's mom's health care? Whether he's part of the first family or what? Why should we even take care of it? Why should we even pay per diem? Why should state officials travel with her? The president can get private security or whatever security for the mom, and then he'll have to night her. But why should we take care of that? You're talking about $3 million with that vague memo. For how many days? I mean, and people look at those things. When I saw that, I mean, take a Kujamale ignore Gambia of recent, but when I saw that, when Dimi Bakele, because I'm like, okay, it shows also that these people, these politicians, build institutions, they build institutions that they have no faith in. You build hospitals. It only come from Mole Bango healthcare is thing. Exactly. But then now the president's mom is like just medical checkup. You're not even talking about treatment.
Going to a foreign country.
You have to go to Dakar. And I've said this, Buba, at some point when the late VP, when he passed away, I said this, more people are talking, this should be a message, a lesson for these politicians. Because look at the VP. Unfortunately, like abandonment outside the Gambia. You understand? Not only we have a proper healthcare system, then you understand? Maybe but come for Muslim or any word or see that. But Hana be fala Gambia. We form a government cost men, a state cost men to get the body back to the Gambian.
It's a lot of money.
So we'll be a lot of money. We'll be able to know but I mean, at some point, even the late mayor of KMC, the same message, the same thing that I said. I said we had a government, APRC government, coming to from Jawara's government to APRC government to come into this government. And at some point, you understand that some of these politicians even support these governments, these systems. I mean, and justify. I mean, I don't like to talk. I mean, about it that or so. But I'm trying to say that politicians Benjamin, they look at those things. Okay, these governments are doing well. This government is doing well and all that. But at some point, why will they all leave the Gambia going for treatment? This is sad. It's unfortunate that politicians have to travel all the way up to treatment or sick. So I think at some point, member in Gambia kumpa. But I remember hani balwo fongola Carola is something that more benyante mirana yet reflect back. Literally everybody has turned to be a beggar. Nita a supermarket also in that country. I was there last summer. Nita supermarket also.
Bedol everywhere.
Bedol Honey airport also. I am telling you, even at the airport, Nika Finti got flight, they come to the cafe $4 so don't want to you understand? So right, I mean, I think what is happening in the country, nimbe honestly knowing a genuine cool mantra nyama. And then the only way out is to put in place a proper system. Change of government. Okay? Could be. And then nanyanto mente as citizens no sort of, but no one thing about
Ngalon na cameraman brother design, but about diaspora voting, not even diaspora design, but the National Assembly recently the diaspora voting, your diaspora bali voting and so for no cabinet clause 14, yeah, bondi the electoral act, more jabal mantra contending wala. Especially more me along call diaspora and the Gambia. So it a diaspora less scientific. Money reaction on it.
Okay, American mantra Gambian.
But we are in the US.
So I mean, I've seen the debate, and Buba must express, disappointment in some of our parliamentarians. I've said this, I think I need to repeat this. My Honorable Madi Sise, if he is watching,
yes.
I once had an interview, I think it was Sergio Brito, Fatu Network, and I said, this parliament, if we're not careful, is going to be the worst parliament in the history of this country. And he was like, no, he came out and, responded and said, no, the Essa will be proven wrong at the end of the day, this parliament is the most effective, it's the best, blah, 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 and all that. But, sometimes they take things personal. I'm not necessarily talking about you as an individual, but in parliament, so it's parliament. I'm not saying that he's doing a good job, even though I saw the Rent Act, I mean, it's good.
That was good.
That was good, but then again, implementation, enforcement.
Yeah,
that's it. So, but in for parliament, if you look at this National Assembly, Janimbe do not diaspora vote for the reject. Tilimbali mal yal melianum ko yeke banko kang and the selfish fenko ye menkeje for na point out. Well, sometimes it's difficult for opposition for a fence or a member for mansa kunam. Because I mean, you look at that country. I've talked about this before I came. What I'm only told Tanung and all that. It may mean a fenna. I mean, you're talking about government wastage, mismanagement of resources and all that. But I don't find you moto la is in millions.
3.5 million.
2.5 na ka mo ko hambe do jola. Who cares? Nimbe do jola na to ngon dole ba kelale. Oral kana moto nyin ta. Na to le ba kelale fa ngoli ata. But again, way boje kotenke, you look at ika karteo fa nyamen in parliament going for their selfish interests at some point. Even though some UDP MPs will say justification of malafika peaceful reform ke or change in the constitution, we thought that there would be a new constitution, these things will be addressed. But you went ahead and changed the age limit. You went ahead and changed section 911D, which literally now protects you. The new law, they are protected. Their seats are protected in parliament. So you will be kele. Ni nata diaspora. So we tilimbali ala kiekan Gambia. Imanke nila interest be dami ibeka kambenne. But nila interest dami kan yo sabawol sako party lines. Nyindo MPP kota UDP kota nyindol kota. Diaspora voting nying. I must mention. I watched Almame Jiba on Kelfato. And he was arguing on constitutionality. Saying that I think the minister misled them. And that's why, not a surprise, he came out, at least to say, there's another way out. I'm like, but why didn't you? We all saw how Tamiru was passionate when he brings, bill to parliament. And we saw even Yankovatura's case, he was there, the first day he was there in court. So he was passionate about what he was doing. But Dauda will bring something without being passionate about it. He will not even defend him. So he misled them. The section 39 of the Constitution is very clear that every Gambian citizen, 18 and above, and of sound mind, shall have the right to be entitled to vote. You understand? And we voted for. So member it went further to say, shall be entitled to register in a National Assembly constituency for this purpose. Now, for National Assembly constituency, constitution koloko al fale diaspora create a fiber more for. I mean for every Gambian, and I'm for melbe banda melbe kakuk every Gambian. So it be planet Mars le bawo, ebe Pluto le ebe Neptune le ebe Earth le ebe Minto le whatever. As long as you are a Gambian, you have the right to vote. So melbe diaspora until be able to constituency letter. Ntabo to Talinding constituency le. Register me in Talinding constituency. You are from somewhere, Old Yundum.
Yes.
Register, somebody from Old Yundum. Somebody from Kiang West. Register the person in Kiang West. If that makes sure you register. Come here for Senegal, plan, so will diaspora constituencies. But in Parita, maybe that's starting with that. We could just vote, allow our people to vote in presidential election. Start with that. Parliamentary election, we can see. Even parliamentary election, we can have a paper ballot system for diaspora.
A system that can accommodate.
Exactly. Marble and drum marimbo use can game mobile follow. You understand? So, but people can be registered in their different constituencies. You don't necessarily have to create a separate constituency, diaspora constituency, so that they have a seat in parliament. Need for the state on the Lua that fire accommodate, then we can bring that. But for now, we have this opportunity to make sure that our diaspora continue to vote. Some people might say, well, why should the diaspora vote if we got tax Georgia? But hey, just last year, $775.6 million. You're not talking about dollars, but dollars. Now what I contribute? Well, I'm now part of the diaspora. So now what I contribute? So and that's like 30-point-something% of 30.1 or so of the GDP. Now you are telling us that, and not only that, but diaspora project Jeleke Gambia, the diaspora club Nyadija. You talk about different people, melam could be Borol Killer Gambia, Ibe Cool Killer Gambia. And now you're telling them that no, you can. I can understand you say they cannot contest for. If you have, or from a near dual citizenship, you cannot contest for presidency. You cannot be a minister, and you cannot be in National Assembly. It's not like Nimu diaspora. They being in the left and contest no president because passport kidnap Gambian passport. So being in diaspora doesn't mean that you cannot. So, but then anyway, from the contest of president, that's not my area. Anyway, that's not
you can
something.
Contest too.
No. So, but if like you have that. Dual citizenship, but Cartefayo as basic fundamental right. A fundamental right like is basic as Cartefayo. Just to allow that put more fundamental. So I don't think there should be a problem in that. But the Minister of Justice parliamentary mislead Alaftala Nyameng, and politically he's serving a political master. So they just went ahead and did that. And in Anajibe, even all boils down to the draft constitution from Ojibe. That's not something we have not talked about just in a minute or so. Even if you look at the draft. So the diaspora voting, Gambian diaspora have the right to vote. and Mansakunda Nyanta make sure that we cut it. But I don't think it's gonna happen. Okay, Atekela. Because they don't have the political will. Even when you look at the Alcalo attestation issue that also, some people are complaining, but I was aware of this. Because I was one time a rapporteur for the National Assembly Select Committee on Constitutional Matters, and when they were looking at this specific electoral bill, I was there. Anyway, I was a rapporteur, so I could not talk. But even some opposition, you'll be surprised, even some opposition parliament, they wanted this to remain. So when I some of them came in front. I'm like, but you were there, some of you, not all National Assembly members, but some of the people that were in the committee. Because you can't alcalo attestation be a favor, but mostly I like income in a favor. So you look at the draft constitution. Yeah, reject Nyaming. I saw people saying, just in a minute, before. I mean, I saw some people saying, constitution will become more favor, Halman do adopt, new at least a new constitutional sort of. I'm like, Gambians, why do we settle for substandard? Yen banko jele. Banko ila constitutional in BTM. Ila constitutional kabiri sort of in BTM. You're talking about hundreds of years. Yeah. And in BTM, 25 amendments. Now, new 25 amendments are being found. But 25 amendments, so that is why they still have the same constitution, right? France, 1958, Charles de Gaulle came with the Fifth Republic. Constitutional. You go to, even India, when they gained their independence in 1947. So, Bankol Bejemen ko Kabirin Sanjelu, Sanjumalem Bank, wala Sanji Talulo, wala Sanji Janu, the same constitutional lesson. Fun told the Bolan to Bank every time new constitution, every time new constitution. Can't we create a document, a legal working document or framework, will survive the test of time? Will be there for like 100 years, or 200 years, or 300 years. But Africa, Halinga, Finkerton, Dron, become more baby. It at a brown $160 million or more was spent. You banko be around, you dice for around. You'll fight. I told Manta Katunya from Mansay. Falka Kasial Kalka dialogue initiate Alka for opposition. Altita Mansalia for going in Menkaman. You understand? So, I mean, the constitution told Sulata Mena Wolemko a proper document, legal framework, may along moving a fundamental. So, Eko ha nani money, na amendment on came. 1997
they said that is possible too.
No, but why do we have to go in for that? Munati nanta document sort la meha nonko. Wo amendment jamali kamelde because 1997 in 2024 ndaman difference ba DJ. Come on for time limit. In fact, this draft constitution has given more powers to the president. 1997 you cannot even remove a nominated member. But this one is saying that you can remove a nominated member. You understand? The 72 hours Fenco for draft 2024, I'm going to say some for 48 member, it's like 72 hours. IG appointment and all that. So accountability in Mantaraji. And for me, in my opinion, that's my humble opinion as Essa, a constitution that does not embody the principles of accountability is just a mere emphasized paper. For me, it doesn't make sense. So accountability is missing. People are not even talking about that. When I saw some people talking about this draft constitution, and they don't even look at that element. All that they are concerned about is time limit. Time limit, don't forget that. Time limit, these are provisions in the constitution. Sometimes they can even change them. We have seen it constitution are manipulating. Even though some of them can be entrenched, but then when people are transformed, when leaders are transformed into dictators, they don't care about what the law says. So, you go time limit for so far, 50 plus 1 member for. I mean, all that they need is 50 plus 1. It don't lie back. So, for me, woman can mean issue. People will vote them out. Whether 50 plus 1 BJ, or a time limit BJ, it be vote all. But not accountability. Boka citizen or banko dingola ke restrictly. Ibeka fenke no. So accountability for me is the most important element of a constitution. That is making sure that institutions are held accountable, from the presidency to the executive or ministers to the National Assembly. I mean, to all other state institutions and public officials are held accountable. But no be botaji. At least we have time. Sometimes, Buba, when I sit here and watch some people talking on the media, I'm like, I can come fale, but at some point I feel like, for you know, how do you even take a reason? You know, like at least time limit bejele, at least femko bejele. In time limit damala do the 1997 though. And if 50 people, they could make amendment then.
Nothing then go use.
Nothing then go use. But I mean, so that's not it. So I feel like a lot is happening in that country, and we have a responsibility as citizens, no system on correct member in that country, so that everybody will have a better life.
Thank you so much, Essa. Ngatindu gaje bage ngatela sort nung this for sort of long interview say malo. But ngatindu gaje bage mafla baraka bage pour gagner opportunity di mo la pour gagner mo le jang in of course Denver, Colorado, America Banko kanjang dami alon ko mbeka jaka no Gambia ko la ning ku kote mal mi alon ko libe kiring an Banko kan mi muta masimo do ala mi musa camera to be wala hadrami haidarati ngatindu gaje bage of course pour gagner do ko ke fire for that. Bye bye.